But thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to start off by saying how much I appreciate today's field hearing. Too often we're stuck in a bubble in Washington and away from Americans that really are impacted by the decisions we make. That's why I travel home every weekend, go to the grocery store, go to the gas station, fill up my van, and trying to make sure that it stay involved with the people that I represent. And we hear stories every day from Kansans and Americans throughout our districts about the concerns that they face, similar to what we're talking about today. The Biden administration and some of my colleagues have tried to paint a rosy picture about the economy, but that's not what people are saying in Kansas or you're saying here today in West Virginia. I had a woman in Wichita call my office a few weeks ago, was shocked to discover that her gas bill was $100 more than it was a year ago. And she was not knowing how she was going to handle that, and angry that decisions and policy decisions in Washington, D.C. and people had openly attacked the energy production in the area. In grocery stores, people are shocked to see the prices and having to discover how much they have to pay for groceries. We've heard recently from the Biden administration that inflation's easing and that they were celebrating 6.5% inflation. Well, that's 6.5% inflation is not something to celebrate. It means prices were 6.5% more than they were a year ago, and that was on top of being 7% higher than they were the year before that. And so in total, inflation's up 14% since President Biden took office. That's kind of a staggering number to think about, that in the last 2 years, the same goods and services cost 14% more than they did before. And that's a permanent loss of American wealth through that cost. And wages haven't kept up. Real wages have dropped 3.5% over the last 2 years. For 21 months in a row, inflation has outpaced wage growth under President Biden. State of our economy is bad, and Americans know it. In our first constituent survey of the year, 71% of the respondents said inflation and the economy are the priority for us to address in Congress. It was the third highest issue for Kansans, just behind federal spending and the southern border. Kansans and West Virginians know that 14% inflation over 2 years is crippling for families and small businesses, and we need to implement common sense solutions to help Americans struggling through this Biden economy. When we can do that, stop attacking American energy, as we've talked about today. One day in office, President Biden and his executive order pen started attacking energy producers, and we've seen gas prices tick up ever since. The so-called Inflation Reduction Act allowed the Biden administration to sidestep rulemaking process, allowing the EPA to impose a methane fee despite ongoing marginal well studies. These fees on small, often family-owned wells could cost the economy up to $9 billion and as many as 90,000 jobs. That's why I've reintroduced a bill, the Marginal Well Protection Act. The bill would prohibit the EPA from imposing a methane fee on marginal oil and gas wells. And to try to cover up the disastrous energy policies, President Biden's put our nation at risk by selling off the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, including to companies controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. The SPR's role is at the lowest level since 1984. And unfortunately, the administration has not created a reasonable plan to replenish the reserves, and they're dragging their feet to go through that process. We need to be responsible about refilling that so that we have that strategic safety net for us in the country. A couple questions before I run out of time. Ms. Bachman, have you had to increase your prices to compensate for some of those phenomenal food price increases you had? And if so, how have your customers reacted to that?
Well, most customers understand, but you have, still a few that are angry that the prices have increased. They don't realize that we buy quality ingredients, so we're buying steak that's been aged for 21 days. So you're going to pay a higher premium on something like that. So, you get good quality ingredients, but for the most part, customers have been very understanding. And yes, we have increased our menu prices.
Thank you. And I just want to say again, thank you all for being panelists today, for spending your time with us and sharing some of the information about the issues that you're addressing and having to deal with, so that we can make sure that we make good policies to help with that. So with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.